I love it. Oh my gosh, Laz.
Got a bunch of people joining. Everybody joining at once. Good morning.
All right.
Looks like Laz is connecting here.
Oh, Keith Madden. Oh my God.
Hi, Linda. Crazy. Welcome.
Hey.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
We'll give a minute or two here to let people filter in. And
what a great
just as a reminder, we record this, so you don't want to be saying anything about your boss or about anybody's team or your weekend drunk plans. So let's save that. So hopefully, can everybody see my screen here, the poll, the weekly poll?
We can.
Yes.
And just as a reminder, it's totally optional to have video on here. This is an intimate conversation. If you want to have video on, you can. If you don't,
is there a Jay Gaines sighting? Do we actually see Jay Gaines? Is that possible?
It is possible. Brian, how are you? Good to see you.
It's so great to see you. One of my favorite people in the world. Good to see you, Jay. You look
Ditto.
Great.
Yeah, you too.
Nice to see Laz on here too. We've got tons of former serious people here today. This is great. Welcome everyone.
The reunion.
Hey guys.
I put on my COVID 10 pounds. I'm hoping that my face at least looks thin. The rest of my body has an extra 10. Jay, you look very lean. You look good.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that.
Laz, we see your smiling face, and thanks everyone. We appreciate you going on video so we can see if you're ready to throw tomatoes at us or anything else. So thank you for that.
All right, let's hop right in because we got more content than time here. Last week's poll, every week we start with a poll, usually around account-based marketing topics. And this week, and we're going to introduce our special guests in a moment as part of this, but this week's poll, we talk about the account selection process. And the question that I had asked was, who is primarily responsible for selecting your accounts as part of your account-based strategy? You can see the numbers here, about 40% marketing. And I was kind of forcing a decision here. I was really trying to see if it was either sales or marketing. Now, we're super fortunate today because we're joined by Brian Carden, as many of you already know him. Brian, who runs both sales and marketing, which is extremely unusual. And how long has it been, Brian? You said 18 months? Or?
Yeah, been 18 months running sales and marketing. I joined as CMO, and I got this interesting gift to run sales as well.
Awesome. So you're right in the thick of this, I imagine. So I kind of forced the scenario of choosing between one of these two parties of what the right group to pick the account-based side of things. Now, the only thing I'll say is, my opinion on this, or my experience, is when sales picks accounts and gives them to marketing, in my experience, marketing ends up with the short end of the stick because they're typically accounts that sales has had a very challenging time to get into or to penetrate. They're never the best accounts that are being flipped over. They're typically, not always, but typically they're the most challenging accounts to get in, and they're kind of thrown to marketing to say, yeah, let's go after these. In the meantime, sales is focused on something else. But I don't know, Megan, what was your reaction to this poll?
I was kind of pleasantly surprised it was that high for marketing choosing accounts. I didn't expect that, quite honestly. I think generally speaking, sales does choose accounts for obvious reasons, right? It's sort of the number on their head. And Brian, I want you to comment on that in a second in terms of how your perspective has changed working with sales. But the thing that I'll say is, I think in a perfect world, you'd have sales and marketing first agreeing on what makes a great account, right? Who you want to go after, and then sort of together using that criteria to choose the accounts. What I find is when either side independently chooses who they should go after, you run into trouble because you don't necessarily have alignment around, why and the things that you need to do to engage them. So that's where I think, and if sales is choosing, for example, based on a set of criteria that aren't particularly rigorous or based on history and not where you're going or not based on the new kinds of offerings that you're going to be having, you can get into trouble that way too. So yeah, I think in my view, a partnership aligned around an ICP works best. But Brian, I think you've got an interesting point of view on this. You're a CMO who runs sales.
I'll just tell you, I think there's an old school way to do it, and everyone's got opinions. So salespeople say, it's healthcare, it's companies over 5,000 employees, it's Latin America. I really don't care about opinions, that we now have data science that can actually say who is much more likely to buy. So I think really getting a couple of years of history and appending data, company size, technologies, industry, role, you can look at where the win rates are, where the opportunities are created, and you don't have to fly by the seat of your pants. At my last company, Fuse, we ran a workshop with sales to identify what we think is the ideal customer profile. And they had a lot of hypotheses. It's healthcare, it's government, it's this, it's that. And we went out and gathered the data, appended the information, and we came back and we wanted to prove what was right and what was wrong. And so we acknowledged that sales had a lot of hypotheses, and we very often came up with very different things, what our sweet spot was for win. Also, we looked at deal velocity. So some of these government deals were huge, but it was like a 2-year cycle. And we really asked the question, we can go after there, we have a pretty good win rate, but you really want a 2-year cycle here and all the cost. So I love sort of getting the anecdotal, what do you think are good profiles to go after? And then running the data science to really prove it out.
I would get the question a lot, Brian, but what if you don't have data? Right. So if you're a newer company or you're going into a new market, because I agree with you, right? Why guess when you can know there is the data? But what if there isn't the data? Any suggestions or things that you've done when you're trying to move into new spaces?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I look at my competition as well, and I think a lot of people want to repeat where the competition is. And from my experience, zigging when they're zagging is a good strategy. So I'll crawl through their job postings for salespeople. Oh, they're looking for government reps. Well, clearly, they're FedRAMP approved. They've got government reps. That may not be a good sector for us. So I try to see where they're going as well. And I find crawling through job postings is a really good way to see where they're focusing and where they're not. I also look at some of the customers that they have on their website. So we try to do sort of that analysis to see where they are. The other thing I found helpful is going to regions that are more emergent. So if your competitors are not all over, Eastern Europe or all over APAC, there's some interesting strategies for going to those markets as well. So I think there's always some data you can use. If you don't have history of what's been good for you, you can find other ways to sort of do it. But I find most companies, unless you've completely repositioned, do have some history about what's worked and what hasn't, where the higher win rates are, or at least the opportunity creation.
We were talking before. Yeah, we were talking a few minutes before we started here about product-led growth. And how does that kind of tie into the selection of accounts, or what trends are you seeing as it relates to account-based marketing and product-led growth?
Well, PLG is a great way to actually let the market speak to you about who wants to buy and what experiences they have. So with PLG, you have lots of people. If you make the product really easy to buy, it's a beautiful experience. And you can see who's using your product. You have all this back end to see who's adapting it, who's using it, who's sharing it. And then you can attach that through all sorts of ways, Clearbit or some sort of matching, to find out what industries are getting usage and who's getting a lot of value out of this. So I think PLG very often in an organic way can bring back information on use cases and industries and customers that are using it well. Megan wrote that great piece recently about PLG and enterprise. And I think very often companies view them as silos. And if you haven't read the piece, you should, because they completely work together. For us, at least, about 30% of all of our enterprise opportunities start as a PLG, start as a free trial. Someone's using the product and we see certain things going on, and then it hits a sort of flag, almost like an MQL. It hits a threshold. Like suddenly there are 20 people at the same company that are using it in a credit card or even a free. They're really inviting other people. It becomes very viral, and that creates an interesting enterprise opportunity. So, and a lot of the great PLG companies did start solely as PLG, the Slacks and the Dropbox, et cetera, and now they have an enterprise. But I think in a lot of these places, they're very distinct. We have a name for the product, the PL-led leads, and these are the PQLs, the product qualified leads. And just like an MQL, you have very specific criteria. What is a product qualified lead? How many users at a different specific account, and what kind of activity would then flag a PQL that we pass to our sales team for qualification.
Yeah, I love that you've got, a label on that. And are those leads handled at all differently than leads that come in through, say, traditional marketing channels, or, through
Yeah, they're
traditional field
rounded. For
outbound?
example, let's say we have Disney as an account of ours, and we have $1 million account with Disney. If we start seeing in a PQL like 20 or 30 people at Disney and other divisions starting to use the free product, we would then flag that to the Disney account executive, and they would go in there and they would say to their champion, like, there are other parts of Disney. Right now we're selling into Disney theme parks, but we're seeing 20 people in the cruise lines or in Disney animation that are doing it. And so they can then say, why don't we put them into the enterprise deal, because better security, we can guarantee a 3-year pricing. This will be a good way to open up something bigger. So it's really, those get routed to the account person who's got those specific accounts. Most of the PQLs do not have a high conversion rate, even though they're in the product. They like the free product. And so we pass those to either a bot or to a SDR for qualification. One thing that's quite controversial, and Megan and John, we talked about this, is I think there's a lot more we can do with technology before a human being talks to another human being. Like, I'm thinking about my own life. Like, I don't want to talk to a banker. This is my bank. I don't want to talk to a travel agent or an airline. This is my travel agent. I don't talk to a cab guy. And I think there's a lot of buying that can happen, and digital experiences can be better than human experiences. And my own bias was, oh, that's a great lead, give it to a human being. Well, the human being doesn't respond fast enough. And sometimes they say something dumb, and you can't really control the consistency of what they do. And so I'm a great believer in automating and setting up all these messages, and think about our own lives. Cars, we never thought cars could be bought without a human intervention. And you look at Tesla and Carvana and Car Gurus and so on. And there's so many examples of whole categories. I'm thinking about houses now, like Zillow will buy your friggin' house. It's like things that were unthinkable a few years ago. And so what happens to real estate brokers? Like, who's married to a real estate broker? How many brokers do we know? Somebody told me, in my town at least, there are more brokers than houses for sale. It's like 3 to 1. It's like, what does a broker do to earn 5%? Does a salesperson really do a lot to earn their commission? And so if marketing can take a bigger hand and create a beautiful digital experience, the kind of digital experiences that Amazon has created or Uber has created, or some of these banks that are just wonderful, I think we can do a lot more selling digitally, and only certain accounts would go to a human being. So I love humans, but I think for the buying process, there's a lot more we can do as marketers to not only identify the lead and qualify it, but actually take their money and close the deal.
In your role of both sales and marketing, you've got kind of both sides of the funnel here too, right? We're talking about the product-led growth and kind of the top end of the funnel. Right. Then there's the other side of the renewal and kind of retention side. Where do you find your energy being spent, and like what trends are you seeing on maybe even on the renewal side, since we talked a little bit about the PLG side?
Yeah, at our company, we have 100% of the Fortune 100. So a big part of my motion is renewals and upsells. And there's a lot of ABM that can happen with renewals and upsells. One little trick that I do is, if there are accounts at risk, I can send a message in app, almost like a survey, to an account using Pendo or something, to say, let me get the exact wording. I actually have the message we send. So the message is, changes to your Envision account. Your license will expire in 100 days. To retain access after this date, please confirm your need for Envision by selecting one of the options. Yes, I want to retain my license, or no, I will not need my license. We take that poll to the champion who wants to churn us or and we say 90% of your current users need their license. And so we do that very often to help with a retention play, a churn, that sort of thing. And then we do tons of account expansion work at our Fortune 100 accounts. So we're always identifying other divisions, other business units that might be likely buyers for us. So I spend a lot of time with our installed base expanding where we are or trying to retain that business.
Love to hear that, Brian. Definitely a big fan of making sure you're expanding what you can with your existing customers who like you. It's just so much easier. But JD,
I've been a junkie, Megan. I've been a junkie for new accounts all the time, like new logos. And then I run the economics on this thing, and deal velocity is so much faster for current accounts. We have an agreement, you have an existing relationship, existing champion, the renewal really matters. There's just so much. And I think a lot of people jump to new logos, course, it depends how big you are and where you are in your cycle as a company. But I think there's so much more to be harvested from your existing accounts. And the economics are so favorable to work that a lot harder. And marketers are just in love with new logos generally. Not this group, of course, but marketers
I
in
think
general.
it's because they get credit for them, but I actually wanted, Jay's very politely had his hand up for some time. I feel like we need to go to Jay and Linda. I see you. Let me see if I can find your numbers, but
I had my digital hand up.
I love
it. So Brian, you kind of, well, I think you addressed my question a little bit, but I totally agree with what you were saying about the digital experiences we can create. And in my experience, both as an analyst working with a lot of companies, but also as a practitioner, you're right. You know, that handoff, what happens next is wildly inconsistent. And if we can create great digital experiences that are consistent, not only can we drive better outcomes, but we can learn pretty quickly. I'm wondering, yeah, and you were ahead of the curve. I remember when you were at Fuse, you had kind of a BDR bot that you were using that you had great success with, and I remember being blown away by that at the time because it was kind of revolutionary at the time. What are you using? Is there kind of a specific technology that you're using now, or is it
Yeah, there is.
Conversica?
So the problem we're trying to solve is what I call, Jay, as the curse of abundance. Like every once in a while, you'll run an event or something and you'll get a spike, you'll get 1,000 leads and you can't possibly follow up fast enough. So all the data on lead follow-up suggests that 2 hours is too late. Like you have to get back to them in minutes. And human beings can't do that because of time zones, they're busy. Maybe there's some latency in your integration between your tool and your marketing automation. So you got to get back right away. So there are 3 leading providers of sort of this bot automation email that are super good. Conversica, Sales Whale, and I think Chili Pepper are the 3. I've used Conversica before, very strong. I'm using Sales Whale right now. And a friend of mine where I'm mentoring, he's using Chili Pepper. And what I really love is the speed of response. As you said, Jay, the consistency of the response. And literally in the response, they can do multiple languages too. So let's say someone writes back in French. Like how many BDRs do we have that speak French, German, Dutch, Portuguese, and Spanish? Like it's crazy. And so these bots can now respond almost immediately. So we get inquiries from APAC and our BDR team, our humans are in North America or Europe. So the bot can respond immediately. They never need to take a vacation, Jay, which is really nice.
That is nice. No,
and you can also,
off.
The call to action can be, hey, I want to speak to a rep, and you can set up a meeting in Calendly or something. So I love this sort of automation of response. And so these have been really terrific for us. Also, they're great at disqualifying as well. So let's say we get those 1,000, that curse of abundance, 1,000 leads from a webinar or you come back from a big event and you get a lot of leads. You give that to the tool, and within 24 hours, it will have gone through all of them with multiple, emails. It doesn't yet have the ability to phone them, however. It's only email. So I think the next generation is going to be that phone call. We'll see what happens.
Great. Thank you.
Well, and we've got a great question from Nadia in the chat. And I love that you're very brave, Nadia, in saying you're the only non-marketing person here. But I think it's really important that we acknowledge actually what you're asking about, which is who owns customer engagement? Who's got that responsibility? And I was pleased to hear you say that it was considered cross-functional because I'm a fan. But Brian, it sounds like you've really been thinking about, sort of that link from product to all the other components of experience. Maybe you can help Nadia with her question. And Nadia, feel free to jump in and share a little more about what you're thinking about.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And good to see you again, Brian.
Good to see you.
We used to work together at Fuse, so it's been a while.
There you go.
Yeah, one of the, you have a PLG, you have onboarding messages, welcome, that sort of thing. And then you have a whole bunch of product adoption things in product. Marketing wants to get to them to drive adoption. And I think what's really important, and Jay really pointed out, is the consistency of the messaging. What's the tone? What's the voice? So at our company, it is jointly owned, but we do map out the life cycle, like what messages do we want to happen and where, and we all agree to this. Because you can over message people. And so if you have the controls in multiple places, it's like, Marketo or Eloqua, if multiple people have access to it, you could oversend or you could violate GDPR or you're not getting double opt in or whatever. So you want to really understand how you're communicating with your installed base. So our messages are harmonized between the product team and between marketing. And we have different paths of different messages. One of the things that marketing really handles is product adoption issues. So we can see people's usage. So let's say they haven't tried this feature yet. We can pop up a little message and say, hey, have you tried this feature, or have you tried this sharing function? So we try to drive a lot of adoption. And then, so it's jointly owned between product and marketing.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Would you say then that marketing owns the ultimate final communication to all customers, or is that, and then
Yeah,
obviously
marketing owns it. Yeah.
Okay.
We have the language and we own that final communication. Yeah.
Great.
I found in the past, I sign up for everything, by the way, as a marketer, probably like new Nadia. I'm like an archaeologist. I love to get emails. I love to get calls from sales reps. So I don't know about you, but how many times does this ring, spam alert? It's some 22-year-old kid trying to sell you some crap. You know what's really good? Take those calls and just see what they do. And you'll see how inconsistent and crazy it is. And from those calls, I often say, they always want to set up a meeting with me. And I always tell them, this is the meeting, you have me. But they're just so overwhelmed, with that, oh my God, I'm speaking to the CMO, what am I going to do? But in all my years, I've actually hired 4 BDRs because they were so good. But I think as a marketer or a salesperson, all of us, it's very interesting to really listen to see how other B2B SDRs are calling. Also, I have my Hall of Fame and my Hall of Shame, great emails. I remember years ago, I used to love direct mail, like the calls to action and how big is the window, and they put a stamp in, you can see the quarter that's there. Oh, I'll open the envelope to get the quarter. I'm great as a student, and I love great marketing. And so I sign up for lots of things. I have a separate email account just for all the marketing stuff, and I go through it. There's a lot of interesting things going on there. And one thing I think all of us know is that the market is really overwhelmed with messages, and we're all screaming for attention. And you really have to do different things now. And really going louder and pushing faster and sending higher frequencies isn't the path. You really need engaging, compelling new ideas. And I would encourage all of us to get really creative. One thing we're doing is old school direct mail. And so I use a little thing called Alice, ALYCE. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's using personalized gift giving. I remember at Fuse, Nadia, where we worked, I told the team, you ought to try to personalize a gift. You're more likely to get a meeting. And so I went over to the BDR group, and they were all had their Facebooks open. It's like the sales leader saying, Brian, they're on Facebook all day trying to personalize these gifts. And so Alice, and I think other couple of companies, they actually can crawl through and do recommendations for gifts that are very personalized. So if you love wine, they'll give you a couple of wine glasses as a gift. Or if you like the opera, they'll give you a coffee table book on opera. So there are lots of different things. I wouldn't think in a pandemic, direct mail to someone's home. But in fact, what Alice does is it sends you an email saying, your rep, Keith Madden, has selected a gift for you. Choose one of these. And they choose one, and then they put their home address in there, and they get the gift. And we've had high conversions to meetings with a personalized gift. Whereas the reps were sending like a hat from Notre Dame, like that's not going to get a meeting. Oh, you saw the person went to Notre Dame or something. So you have to get clever about those things. And there are a couple ways to scale that.
Double clicking for a
Linda's asking
moment.
a good question here. Metrics, conversion metrics from personalized gifts. What are you seeing after they take the meeting?
We're seeing there's no obligation to take the meeting, even though that's the whole purpose. We want them to say, oh, I took a $50 gift, I should take the meeting, but they don't have to take it. And so I'm trying to remember what the conversions were. From Alice, of the people who take the meeting, I'd say about 25 to 30% became opportunities. So it was about a third. So I thought it was pretty good qualification. Obviously, the people we sent the gift to were pre-qualified. I think we had intent data on them. We were getting intent data from either G2 or Trust Radius or Capterra, people who were, and I like this one if you're not doing it, people who are reading crowdsourced reviews. And I've always found that helpful. If they're reading crowdsourced reviews of your competitors, they're obviously doing research. And I found that intent signal is a pretty good one. And so I think it was a pre-selected audience, Megan, of people that we would send the gift to, of people we thought were in a buying cycle. So pretty reasonably good conversion there.
Yeah, I think that's that's a key point, right? Like you can't create urgency on the part of your customer. I mean, you can try for sure, but I think you've got to say, does this person have a reason to buy? Because I feel like, personalized gifts are fun, but if they're directed at somebody who's not really there yet, maybe it's not doing you any favor. So I think that's an interesting one to make sure that you're marrying it up, like going back to your point about selecting accounts, right? Marrying it up with the data. Don't just, do it for fun. Do it because there's a reason to think this will actually help you get into a conversation that person's ready and willing to have.
I see one of my partners who had great technology at Tech Target. I think he's joining next week. Is that really John, or is that just a picture of John? Have you joined?
John Steinert, hello.
Geez, Brian, I can't hide anywhere.
I'll tell you, Tech Target was amazing for us. And the team really personalized a lot of things. And I don't own any stock in their company. John probably does. But they were just a very valuable partner to us and gave us lots of great ideas. And so if you're a B2B company, I think you ought to be talking to Tech Target. I think they're just terrific. And John, as the CMO, was really someone who I would rely on. I always love that it wasn't always the sales team selling me, but John personally would talk to me about how he uses it and how it works, and give me some tips. So thank you for that friendship and partnership, John.
B2B tech, guys. I mean, we can talk all day about B2B, but we really focus on B2B tech. So I'm also a user of Brian's product. So I study Brian's work and think about how he manages and envision. So there's just a lot to learn by interacting like this, I think.
Hey, John, just to be clear, you don't have any lines this week. You're on next week, so you can please lighten up on the script. Save it for next week.
Well, and you've got Linda with a hand up here too, so I'm gonna turn it over to Linda. Tell us what your question is.
Thank you. And my question is pertains to Tech Target. And before John showed up, so
I can get off if you want.
No. I mean, we are piloting Tech Target, Priority Engine. We're doing content syndication in concert with Priority Engine, and the intent that we're having a problem with HubSpot. So HubSpot is not recognizing, and I'm wondering if other people have run into this. HubSpot doesn't recognize the Tech Target as opted in. And to be quite candid, John, that's why we bought it, is that, I was sold on kind of that double opt-in, which was great because I figured, all right, I'll get those intent leads and then I'll nurture them. And now we're running into an issue where HubSpot somehow is flagging them and saying they're not GDPR compliant. So real live use case, figured I'd bring it up on this call.
You want me to talk?
Anyone that's maybe run into something similar, or is there a workaround that maybe I haven't thought about?
Yeah, I think there is a workaround. I don't know exactly what it is, so I can look that up. I do know that HubSpot has a particular feeling about this, that they are kind of forcing certain clients to do, but we have tons of HubSpot clients, so I think that there's a workaround. So Linda, let me look into that.
John will really look into it and get back to you. That's the kind of CMO he is.
And I do agree with what Brian's saying. I mean, John, the team, the support team, customer success team, very responsive, but we're sort of at this point where, HubSpot is, we don't want to get blacklisted or somehow, be prevented from sending out on HubSpot. So we've sort of stood down, and now we're not doing anything with those Priority Engine names.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad.
I know in our experience with HubSpot across the board with all ABM platforms, there's an issue with anonymous traffic and HubSpot's ability to interpret that. Bombora came out with a patch on that, but I've not actually seen it in action. I'll follow up and drop you a link on it just so you can read up. It's a HubSpot issue, I think is at least on that aspect of the traffic. I don't know if that's directly related to you or not, but we've seen it across every ABM platform that we've been involved with.
Well, it seems like their position is they're opting into Tech Target, but not into my company, Dragos, right? That's where I think where they're drawing the line. So they're not interpreting that as a direct opt-in for us.
Yep.
Yeah, but the reality is that the way our opt-in works is that it is an opt-in to you. So as a client of the platform, it is an opt-in to you. And so it's a policy issue at HubSpot, I think. And I think the workaround is a senior conversation with HubSpot, but let me check 100%.
Thank you.
Because obviously like 25% of our clients use HubSpot.
So just to close things out, I'm thinking, and John Steiner, thank you. And I'm glad, Linda, that you can hopefully get that sorted. But Brian Carden, I would love for you to close with, since you now are running sales as well as marketing, top 3 things you've learned now running sales over the last 18 months, and that you would want to share with the group here.
Yeah, it's a great question. One is simplicity for the sales team. I think all of us in marketing have big eyes and we want to create great dashboards and new tools. And so I would really simplify the life of a salesperson. The second thing that I've learned is that you really have to listen to the sales organization, what's working, what isn't, and they want to feel part of a team, and that marketing is very aligned with what they're doing. Of course, with sales reporting into marketing or into me, it's been super aligned and fully integrated. And I think the last thing is to understand sort of the different time frames. Like right now I've got 7 days before the quarter ends because we're 1 month over. And so I'm very focused on closing the quarter. And I've very often seen at the end of a quarter, marketing, let's say, give high fives. We hit our MQL target, we hit our lead, we hit our pipeline target, and the sales team is down here. So I think aligning everybody on the same targets really matters. It's just a shame when one team is celebrating, one team isn't. It's just wrong. And so we're looking very closely at bookings for this marketing organization as well. So everyone has one metric or one team. We care about hitting something. And so that really matters a lot. So those are just 3 things that I've learned. And I love the sales team. They're just wonderful. The other thing I'll say is it's really like a sponge. You can't put an infinite amount of water in a sponge. They only can absorb too much. And I think I've tried to push too much enablement and too much training. And sometimes it takes a while for them to absorb it. So every quarter, like, hey, we have a new product, a new launch, new thing, like, whoa, they haven't even figured out, what the old one was and testing it, in the field. So I would lay back and probably do fewer kinds of training and enablement things rather than more. More isn't necessarily better.
That really resonates, especially the tool side of things. You don't want to overwhelm your SDR or your sales teams with new tools and processes and changes, and because they have so little time to learn.
Yes, exactly right.
Excellent. Well, we're a couple minutes over time, and we've got our special guest John Steiner joining us next week, who's here now. And yeah, Brian, really appreciate you making the time this week to invest with us. So thank you for
my pleasure. Great seeing everyone. Thank you for the great questions, engagement. Appreciate it.
I'll get back to you, Linda.
Thank you, John.
All
Both
right.